So, people might have their own opinions, but to me, like, I'm not thinking about the Nebraska game right about now. And of course, we'll have our Tuesday shows to do that the next couple of weeks. So, like, there's plenty we can eventually say about Nebraska. I think as we wind down our show tonight, guys, it's time to look at the big picture for USC. I think that, another failure here on the road and, almost certain to miss the playoff. Like, if USC runs the table, outside chance, but really, who thinks USC is going up to Autzen Stadium and is beating Dan Lanning and Eugene? I think USC can beat everyone else, but beating Oregon on the road, it's probably not going to happen. It could, if this team can avoid mistakes, but really, being realistic, it's not likely to happen. So that would be 4 straight years without a college football playoff berth. And just, we know that Lincoln Riley is coming back. And I mean, hey, as someone who has never been to Gainesville, Florida, I would like to tell Lincoln Riley, hey, I think it's a lovely place. You should consider it, give it a lot of thought now that Billy Napier's been fired. But that aside, I know Lincoln Riley is going to stay put here. He's going to be coaching this team in 2026. So brass tacks, guys. If Lincoln Riley does not make the college football playoff next year, 2026, is he done? Should he be done? Ethan first, Crash second.
So, just a quick note on, your point about USC and the rest of the season. I talked about it a lot at the beginning of the show. We have Conquistador 78 kind of relitigating my point basically that I made at the beginning of the show. Like this, the only way that we can look back at this game and say that it produced something positive for USC is if because everyone has something to look at from this game and take stock of that they failed in and get better at. And then, go 4-1 at minimum and, probably run the table. And then, we're looking back at this game as something that may have helped USC rather than hurt them. But anyway, I think, about the rest of the season, USC could go 5-0. I want to also litigate the point. The reason why I made the point at the beginning of the show was not because, I'm like sunshine pumping in the sense that I think USC is going to go 5-0. I think that, they like, that's what they need to be focused on now is turn the page and focus on that. And I'm not saying that I think this is going to happen either, but they could go 0-5. That's not entirely out of the question. I don't think that they will, and I want to put that out there now. I don't think that they will. They're going to
win. If they lose to Northwestern on that Friday night, burn the whole place down.
They're going to beat Northwestern. They're going to beat Iowa, and they're going to beat UCLA. Like I will make those predictions confidently now. But those are all teams that have played decent football against decent teams. So none of these games should be viewed as cakewalks is all I'm saying. I don't think USC is going to go 0-5, but we look back to 2023, a season that the USC lost to Notre Dame and snowballed. Like winning in Lincoln in 2 weeks is very important. And not overlooking Northwestern is very important. This is not the same Northwestern as they were last year. They're still not great, but it's not the same Northwestern as last year. UCLA looked like they were an 0-12 candidate, and they've won 3 in a row. So they, are also they're not a pushover anymore.
What if USC brought in Tim Skipper?
That's a funny thought, Matt. Save it for the Trojans Wire roundtables. That'd be an entertaining one for us to do. Anyway, Iowa can play offense now, and then obviously Oregon's Oregon. So all of these games need to be taken very seriously, and we need to treat them, just as important as this Notre Dame game, as the Michigan game, because none of these are gimmies like they looked at. Even though some of them looked like gimmies at the beginning of the year, they're not as much gimmies anymore. And that's not about USC; it's about the other teams. Credit to the other teams. So the rest of this season still really matters. So I want to make that clear before I talk about next season, because there's a lot that Lincoln Riley has to gain or lose the rest of this season. Absolutely. Like if Lincoln Riley goes 0-5, he should be fired at the end of the season. recruiting class.
If he goes 2-3, he should be fired.
Recruiting class be darned, like he should be fired. If he loses to 2 out of 3 of Northwestern, Iowa, and UCLA, like he should be seeing his way out. So, anyways, so there's a lot to be gained or lost. Now, moving on to next season. I mean, we don't know. I will preface this by saying we don't know what the schedule is yet. USC could be up against Ohio State and Indiana, and
Ohio State is going to be on the schedule because USC avoided OSU in each of the first 2 Big Ten rotations. Right. So Ohio State will be on that next year's schedule.
Right. So, I mean, and, this big recruiting class is coming in, but they're also freshmen, which, like, it's also a point for the people who are like, oh, wait for the recruiting class. Lincoln Riley's going to save us. Like, they're freshmen, like they're not going to step in and be superstars immediately. And I think, there are other important, like recruiting some of the best players on the roster now to stay. Like, there are transfer portal pieces they need to go out and get. Like, it's not like this recruiting class is going to save everybody. So, all that to say, if Lincoln Riley doesn't make the playoff next year, he should be fired, because that probably means he goes 9-3 or worse, I would think, because I think you can be a 2-loss team in the Big Ten and make the playoff, especially if you make the conference championship game. Like if USC loses to Notre Dame, assuming that Notre Dame's on the schedule next year, and then to Ohio State or Indiana, but they beat one of the two, then they're making the playoff. But that means they go 9-3 or worse. So that means that they just unequivocally cannot compete at the Big Ten level against top-tier Big Ten teams, because it means that either they lost to Notre Dame, Indiana, and Ohio State, who are all better than they are right now, pretty clearly, or, which I, again, litigated at the beginning of the show, or they beat one of those teams and then they lost to another, like Illinois. And I think that is honestly what we shouldn't tolerate next year and what we shouldn't tolerate this year. Like, could USC take 2 losses next year and it still be a successful season? Yes. Should they be losing to Illinois, Minnesota, Maryland, Washington, you name it, Iowa, any Nebraska, any of these middle tier Big Ten teams? No. So I think that is when, I think especially if they already have a loss and they go into Minnesota and PJ Fleck beats them again, I think that's the last straw in 2026.
So Matt, I do find it interesting that you talked about Billy Napier in Florida, actually, because I want to go back to last year, actually, when Billy Napier was under fire. Gators were 4-5. They rattle off 4 straight plus their bowl game to finish the year 8-5 and come into this year with a ton of momentum. I think they were preseason number 14, if I have that correct, somewhere in the teens.
Yep.
And they obviously beat their FCS cupcake, but then they lose to South Florida, and then the heat is back on the Gators and Napier in particular. And then you just saw it kind of just snowballed from there, where just things got out of control. Yeah, they beat Texas, cooled the heat for a sec, but then the loss to Texas A&M a week later just basically just re-inflamed everything. And then it seemed like Napier was it was decided before the Mississippi State game, from what I was seeing, that he was going to be gone regardless of what happened. And they won, and he was still fired earlier today. So I bring that up to say that if USC can have that sort of run now and finish the season on a strong note, it'll look good for Lincoln Riley, especially considering USC's record is much better than Florida's was at the time of the Gators when they went on their run last year. But if that momentum drops off, and even if they don't make the playoffs, let's say they finish 9-3, even 8-4, they drop one they shouldn't. As long as I think you can just show okay, we're making progress, we're making momentum, they win their bowl game. I think you just look good coming into next year. You have that recruiting class come in, you hold on to most of them, and then you just can keep that momentum going. But if that momentum just stalls at any point, I don't know how he's going to – I don't think fans are going to have much patience. Then I think USC will have a decision to make there. And then also, we don't know. Will Notre Dame be on it? That one got removed from the website a couple days ago. They know they're playing Fresno State. Then they know their Big Ten slate. That's been already decided. So I think it's really just going to be like, can he get momentum now, and can he carry that into next year? If he can't do – obviously this year, he's going to stay, barring something crazy. But if he can't keep that momentum going into next year or can't get USC off to a hot start, I don't really see – how he's got a future here, and the calls for him to go are going to get even louder.
Next year will be year 5 for Lincoln Riley at USC. And 5 years is quite a lot of time, and people have mentioned it in the chat, and it's true. Curt Cignetti has taken Indiana from Nowhereville to the very top of college football in 2 seasons. And, he got him to the playoff in year 1. And, that's going to be the standard against which coaches are going to be measured. And it might be unfair to a lot of people, but you know what? I think for Lincoln Riley, with what he did at Oklahoma, it's not particularly unfair. That was the expectation going in. Not so much year 1, but certainly by year 5 that this program would be rocking and rolling as the Cadillac program it has been. Ethan, you wanted to get in.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for noticing that. I just wanted to say, I think the Cignetti comparison for a lot of coaches is unfair because, Cignetti is the exception, not the rule. People don't just walk into programs and make them powerhouses immediately. That's not, that doesn't happen. And he deserves a lot of credit for that. But the reason why a lot of people use the Cignetti Lincoln Riley comparison, which I think you articulated a little bit, it goes back to 2022, which is that Lincoln Riley looked like he was doing a Cignetti.
Yeah.
USC was 4-8, and it would have made sense if Lincoln Riley came in his first year and was 8-5. People are so much less frustrated right now, I think, if 2022 and if 2022 doesn't happen and we have more like a 2023 season, because it would have been understandable. But because Lincoln Riley was able to do the Cignetti thing, that's why people are so frustrated and keep comparing. First, people who don't understand the comparison, I think I've kind of finally understood that this weekend after I realized it's the expectation that he set because he showed, and he's had some stuff going against him, sure, and it's a really tumultuous time in college football and whatever. There's excuses you can make for him, yes, but he kind of did it. He nearly did a Cignetti, so why if he was able to make so much change in so little time, why now is it a snail's pace to make further change, I think is kind of the issue. So anyways, but you were kind of get on that train already, Matt, but continue.
Well, you stayed on that train and you took it in a different direction, but an interesting direction. And it's obviously, it's really is weird, but I mean, it's weird in a bad way, right? We're always talking about, the future of Lincoln Riley and the uncertainty surrounding him. We ought to be talking about USC closing in on a playoff berth and competing for a Big Ten championship. But unfortunately, for another year, this is the reality, the middle of the season after Notre Dame. It kind of feels very Clay Helton-ish at the moment, and that's never a good thing, or almost never a good thing at USC. I mean, Clay Helton did at least make the Rose Bowl. Would be nice for Lincoln Riley to do that at USC.